I said, my husband and I, we've been married for 10 wonderful years. We've tried multiple things along the way. My period has never been regular. Ever since I was 14, I've had problems with my period. It would go anywhere from 1 week to 3 weeks. And, you know, sometimes I wouldn't get my period, and sometimes it would be so heavy I would end up in the emergency room. I mean, it was just crazy. It was all over the place, and I was on birth control pills since I was 14 years old, and it's always been a struggle. So I always knew that it was going to be hard for me to have a baby. I knew that, you know, when I was young. So it wasn't until I had 3 miscarriages that the doctors were looking more into trying to figure out why I was having a miscarriages so much. It really made me upset because, I mean, I thought they'd figure it out by the first one, and then the second one, and then the third one, and still they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Multiple tests were run with me and with whatever the tissue that I passed. And they, and there was nothing, they said they couldn't find anything wrong with me. They couldn't find anything wrong with the baby. For a long time, we weren't getting pregnant. There was like long periods. I mean, we've been married for 10 years. So there's long periods of times when we were not pregnant at all. And, and then we thought maybe it was him at first, and maybe it was me. And we did a lot of testing. We did infertility testing for him and for me, and there was, long story short, there's nothing wrong with him. And then they said there wasn't anything wrong with me. And then it wasn't until I kept having miscarriages. I had 4 miscarriages, and then they were finally like, okay, let's get down to the nitty gritty and figure out what's wrong with me. They did tons of blood work. I was constantly going in and getting blood work done, and they finally figured it out that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, and they diagnosed me with that at age 30. I'm 31 now. So yeah, I mean, it took them a long time. You would think that they would have figured that out when I was, back when I was 14, but I guess not. So yes, they did diagnose me with that. And then they also figured out that I was having all the miscarriages because I had a hormonal imbalance. And, which made sense because I was losing all my babies before 2 months. So the furthest that I held a pregnancy was 8 weeks. And that was hard for me. I mean, getting pregnant and then losing the baby, and you're like, oh, third time's a charm. Well, no, and then you lose it. And so they finally figured it out. They said it was a hormonal imbalance. I had to go on, some different drugs and stuff. They put me on metformin, and they put me on prolactin. Metformin because it, they use it sometimes to treat diabetic patients, but it's also to help women who have polycystic ovarian syndrome like me. So I was on that, and I was also on the prolactin, which is the hormone imbalance, and my body just kept rejecting the pregnancies. So I had to take those pills up until I was 3 months pregnant, so that my body wouldn't reject the pregnancy. But I was also on Clomid because I wasn't ovulating. Because I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, I was not ovulating all the time, because that's what happens when you have polycystic ovarian syndrome. Your periods are irregular, you don't ovulate every month, and that's why it took us so hard to get pregnant. And I didn't know when I was ovulating, so I didn't know when to try, and so it all makes sense now. So then, I was on Clomid, and I had to pee on sticks every month to figure out when I was ovulating. And if I was ovulating, then we'd have to try. And there's this tiny little window. I did get pregnant, and I was so happy because, it was a miracle. Like, honest to God, it was a miracle. I praise the Lord every day for my beautiful, amazing miracle baby. I did not ovulate that month. I was on Clomid for 7 months, and I was on the lowest dose, and I did not ovulate that month. I peed on the sticks, and it was a negative. And I called the doctor, and they said, we will up your dose next month when you start your period. And I said, okay, that's fine. We'll do that. And then we just bought a house. So we had the pastor come over, and he prayed, and he blessed the house. And then we also had him pray for us, pray for us so that we could have a baby. And so he did. And, I was starting a new workout routine, and I was on Insanity week 3. And instead of getting better, I was getting worse. I had to take breaks. I had terrible heartburn. I couldn't get through my workouts, and I was like, what the? I'm supposed to be getting better. I'm supposed to be getting more sturdy and, last longer during the workout or whatever, and, be stronger, more endurance. And instead I suck more, and I'm on week 3, and it didn't make sense to me. And then my husband's like, well, aren't you supposed to be getting your period soon? And I was like, yeah, I am supposed to get my period soon. And, I had this app, and I was looking at it, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually 3 days late. And so he was like, well, why don't you take a pregnancy test? And I didn't want to, because I hate taking pregnancy tests. I just, after trying for so long and all the negatives that you get, and I just, so I was like, well, it's okay. I'll just wait a while, because I just started a new workout routine, and it was intense for me. And usually when I switch it up, my diet, or if I start a new workout routine, my body takes a while to catch up, and everybody's different. And I knew that about myself. So, I was like, it's probably just going to take a while to catch up. So then I waited, and then I was, late 3 days. I was going on late 4. So the next morning, the 4th morning, I decided to take a pregnancy test. And I took it, and I wasn't thinking much about it. I set it on the counter, and I didn't want to look at it. And then I glanced at it again after, 3 minutes, and it was positive. And I was so happy. I fell to my knees, and I was crying, and I just thanked God. Like, I was just so happy and so emotional. Like, oh my God, I'm pregnant, and how could this be? I didn't even ovulate. And I was crying, and my husband said, why are you crying, or what's going on? Why don't you tell me? You're scaring me. And I said, I'm pregnant. I can't believe it, but we're pregnant. And so I gave him the pregnancy stick, and sure enough, he verified for himself. And we were just so happy that we were pregnant, and we were going on 10 years, and plus I didn't ovulate that month. So I was thinking like, oh, I'm going to wait for my period, and I'm going to start a new cycle of Clomid and start all over again. And, but no, I was pregnant, and we were so excited. And of course, when you're pregnant, you're always waiting for the, after having so many miscarriages, waiting for the other shoe to fall, okay, and I lost all my babies before 8 weeks. And the ultrasounds were the worst, because every time you go to an ultrasound, that's that's when they would tell you. That's when they would say, I'm sorry, but your baby's dead. Or I'm sorry, but you're going to lose your baby. Or they wouldn't give me a picture. They wouldn't tell me why. And that was the worst, because the ultrasound tech, you know, they'd smile and they'd do their thing, and then they wouldn't say anything. And it wasn't until you go see your doctor that they say, oh, you know, I'm sorry, but you lost it, or whatever. And so it was so scary for us. The first 6 to 8 weeks, it was terrifying for the both of us, just, you know, not knowing. And of course I was on these pills that they gave me, the metformin and the prolactin. So I was on those pills, and they said I was supposed to take them up to 3 months, and then after 3 months my body should know, my body should know by then if I was pregnant or not, and it should not reject the pregnancy, because by then the baby hormones should have taken over. So, you know, so I took the pills up till 3 months, and I didn't want to go off of them because I made it to 3 months, and I was terrified. I was scared. I didn't want to stop taking them because they worked. And my doctor was like, no, you need to stop taking them. You should be okay now, so you need to stop taking them. So, you know, I listened to her. I stopped taking the hormone pills at 3 months, and I was 12 weeks, and I was, you know, excited. And of course the first trimester I had, you know, I had morning sickness, and I was tired all the time. And so at 12 weeks, I, you know, finally I had this burst of energy, like, oh, you know, I have all this energy, and I think I'm gonna clean the house, because the house looks like, you know, a mess, and all I do is sleep. And so I did. I cleaned the house. I did some laundry. I don't know. I was tidying around the house and stuff. And it was 4 o'clock the next morning, and you know, my tummy kind of hurt. So I went to the bathroom, and there was a lot of blood. I thought I peed myself. I thought I peed in the bed, but there was a lot of blood. And I was terrified. I called the doctor 4 in the morning, and the doctor said, oh, I'm sure he had a miscarriage. And I said, but I'm 12 weeks. I'm 12 weeks. And he said, well, as much blood as you're experiencing, I'm sure it's a miscarriage. But, you know, just to make sure, why don't we have you come in for an ultrasound? So, of course, I was crying. I was a mess. My husband was upset. And, you know, of course, they go to another ultrasound. And like I said, we're terrified of ultrasounds because we never get good news when we go to ultrasounds, ever. So, we went to the ultrasound, and they said, you know, she was kind of like preparing you for the worst. I lay down on the bed, and then, you know, she put the jelly in my tummy, and then she started the ultrasound. And then as soon as it came up on the screen, she said, do you know what that is? And I was like, no, what? And she said, that's your baby's heart. And you could see that his heart was beating, and he was moving, and I was just so happy, but I was so scared, like, okay, well, where's all this blood coming from? And is he gonna stay my baby, or is he gonna go? Like, I've never made it this far before. The longest I've made it was 8 weeks, and now I'm 12 weeks, and I have all this blood, and, you know, like, I don't know. And so, it ended up being like placenta tear. I guess I was lifting or whatever too much, and so there was a tiny little tear on the placenta, and they said, you know, just go home and rest. You should be okay. It'll heal by itself. So I'm like, okay, you know, I mean, we're still scared. So I went home, rested. It got better. Okay. So, you know, we made it past 12 weeks and took it easy. Everything seemed to be going okay. I made it second trimester, and I just love second trimester. No more heartburn, and no more morning sickness. And I actually got the energy that they were saying I was going to get, because, you know, I was so tired my first trimester, and I kept thinking, when is this energy supposed to... People keep saying I'm supposed to be getting all this energy in my second trimester, and I feel like crap, you know, so I started to get that, and it was great. I loved it. And then it was my nephew's, my nephew's birthday, which is my godson, and he lives in the city. So we went to their house, and at that time I was 32 weeks. And, you know, I was taking a shower, and then, you know, well, I had some cramping, and then I took a shower, and then I lost my mucus plug. And, I mean, let me tell you, it's kind of gross. I mean, it was definitely my mucus plug. I mean, it was like this big, and it's like gross. It's like snotty-ish. And I don't know if there was blood or not, because I was in the shower, so I couldn't tell, but I definitely knew it was my mucus plug. Couldn't mistaken it for anything else. And then, but you know, it was only 32 weeks, so I was freaking out. So I got out of the shower, and I told my sister-in-law, I said, oh my God, I lost my mucus plug. Like, what? And she was like, oh my God, when I lost my mucus plug, my water broke like 5 minutes later. So then I was freaking out, because I was like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for my baby. I didn't pack my bags yet. My baby's like so little. Like, I'm only 32 weeks. I'm not ready, you know, and plus we're out of town. So I was freaking out. I called my doctor, and the doctor on call said, you know, it's okay if are you having cramps? Are you bleeding? And I said, no bleeding, no cramps. And she said, you know, just take it easy, put your feet up for the rest of the day. And as long as you're not cramping or bleeding, you should be okay. We shouldn't worry about it. And I said, well, is it normal to lose your mucus plug at 32 weeks? And she said, no, it's not normal, but I don't want you to worry too much. Like, okay, well... Okay, so then we came home later that, you know, we went to the birthday party, and then we did come home later. And later that night, I started getting cramps. And I told, you know, we had supper, and then I had cramps, and I asked my husband, can you take a note of the time? So then 15 minutes later, I had more cramps. And then after that, 15. And, you know, so for an hour, for every 15 minutes, I kept having these really sharp pain in my tummy, and I didn't know what it was. And then it went from every 15 minutes to every 10, every 5, every whatever. And so I called the doctor, and they said, you know, you need to come in right now. So I went in. They couldn't figure out what it was. It wasn't contractions, but they could clearly see I was in pain. They did like fibronectin tests, which checks to see if you're actually going into preterm labor. They did a whole bunch of stuff. And then they put me in the hot tub to try to relax me and try to get rid of the pain and cramping and stuff. So I was in there for a long time, and I want to say I was in there for like, I don't know, 4 hours, 3-4 hours, I don't know. And then when it came out, I mean, I felt better, and my labs came back, everything was normal, so they let me go home. So then they said I couldn't travel anymore, just because, you know, I kept having stuff. And so my doctor just said, you know, just kind of take it easy, and we don't want you to travel anymore. So I'm like, okay. So then it was the weekend after that, and my sister's pregnant too. She's 2 months ahead of me, and she had her baby like Halloween weekend. So I was like, oh, you know, let's just sneak up there quick and see her baby and then come back and they won't know, right? So that's what we did. But that's not what happened. When we got up there, it was Halloween morning, and it was like, I don't know, 6 in the morning. And I went to the bathroom and I was looking at my hands, and they were so big. They were like gloves, and they were like tight, and I couldn't like do this, and I couldn't make a fist, and they were huge, and my ring looked like it was gonna like suffocate my finger. Like, I don't know, they would have to cut it off or something. And I went to wake up my husband, and I said, oh my God, my hands hurt. Like, look at my hands. And he said, look at your face. And so I went in the mirror, and I looked in the bathroom in the mirror, and my face was like, it was like huge. And my hands were big, and my face was big, and I was freaking out. So of course I called the doctor on call, and she said, you know, oh, we're worried about preeclampsia. It's nothing that we joke about. It's serious. If you do have preeclampsia, sudden swelling is a big sign of preeclampsia, so you need to come in right now. And I was like, I'm kind of out of town. And so, yeah, she was not happy. She was yelling at me. And I was thinking, dang, like, I was going to go under the radar. And we were going to go quick and then come back and nobody would know. It'd be all, you know, on the DL. Well, no. So we ended up going to the hospital. And the cities in a different town. No, they didn't know my record. They didn't know anything, history or anything about me. And, you know, I had to figure out if my insurance covered. Oh, it was just a headache. So I had to sit in the hospital Halloween day, and they kept monitoring my blood pressure and trying to figure out if I had preeclampsia, which is protein in the urine. It causes the mom to have seizures, and you know, because her blood pressure keeps increasing, and it causes her to have seizures and life-threatening things. It's not good. And then the only thing that you can do in that situation is to have your baby, right? But I was only 33 weeks, so I didn't want to have my baby. But if I did have preeclampsia, I wouldn't have a choice. So anyways, they ended up doing tests, kept me all morning. My blood pressure was fine, so they sent me home. It was funny because I went to the same hospital my sister was in, and so we were a couple doors, you know, from each other, so we just kept going back and forth to visit each other and the baby. And then I came home, and of course, no more traveling for me. I had to pack my bags and get ready. And then a couple weeks later, I was 36 weeks, and I started getting all these headaches. Well, I was still swelling. Like, my swelling had gone down from when I was in the cities from Halloween, but I had like cankles, like, ugh, like gross. Like, my ankles were huge, and I was like, my face was puffy, and my hands were puffy, and oh yeah, my sister came and she was like, ew, because I was like, look at my feet, they're so puffy, and she was like, ew. And I said, just you wait, when you get pregnant and your ankles are puffy, I'm gonna be like, ew, to you too. But my mom was like, that happens to some pregnant people. Some people get it swollen, some people don't. So, you know, whatever. I didn't think anything of all the swelling and stuff. But I kept getting this headache, and it wouldn't go away. And I took Tylenol, and it wouldn't go away. And I wasn't drinking caffeine. I don't drink caffeine. And I stopped drinking green tea, because I drink tea, but I stopped drinking green tea. So I don't have caffeine. I don't know why I was getting all these headaches. And I don't eat a lot of junk food and stuff. So... and I didn't have a lot of sodium in my diet, so I don't know. And I took Tylenol, and it didn't work. So, of course, I called the clinic, and they said, you know, why don't you just come in, and we'll just take your blood pressure real quick. I'm like, okay. So I came in, they took my blood pressure. My blood pressure was elevated, and that is a sign of preeclampsia. So then they said, well, we'll send you home and run a 24-hour urine, which you have to pee in a bottle for 24 hours. And then, you know, they have to test it for protein to see if protein is in your urine, which is a sign of preeclampsia. It's a side effect of that. So that's what I did. And the results came back and it was borderline. So I kept having these headaches. Weeks passed. I went back to work. Weeks passed. I kept having these headaches. I kept, you know, I was still bloated. I still had kinkles and my hips hurt. And